Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. When I put out my video for Transients last week, I was not expecting another video to drop so soon. We got a 2-hour gameplay video that went through with Admiral Bahroo and Tragic from the development team on Remnant 2. To save you the time from watching the 2-hour and 6-minute gameplay video, I've decided to break it down for you up above. Now when I do this, all this footage that you see is going to be between Tragic and Admiral Bahroo and Remnant 2. Some of the talking points to bring up here is that we get to see 2 new dungeons to us, which are Koala Rest Dungeon and Imperial Gardens dungeons. The other thing is that they're also aiming for a summer 2023 release, so that's why you're seeing all the media hype, because we're going to be seeing this game real soon. It's going to be launching on every platform, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. It will be available on Steam. We also have no current information if there will be a beta test of any type at this point. I'm going to leave footage of the 2 new dungeons rolling up top while we discuss some of the points that were taken away in the show. You're going to be relatively surprised at how short it was, the things you're going to take away from this. I watched all 2 hours of it. The footage is pretty cool, but there's a lot of talking. I'm going to give you all the main points that we were able to extract from it. The team made it a point to concentrate on performance first and then what the community wants. So there's going to be some items that the communities have requested that we're not seeing yet, but they have heard them, and it's not that they will not be coming. They just wanted to make sure that the game launched because, like us, they're tired of seeing games that release broken, and they do not want to release a broken game. So they're trying to concentrate solely on that first. Directly from the developer's mouth, the community cannot want things if they can't even play the game, so they want to make sure the game is playable outright first. I have a lot of respect for this step because it's the same thing that Transients is doing for their team over there. And some of the companies, I believe, should be taking this step as well. It's a step in the right direction so that we stop getting games that are released broken and we start getting more quality games. I can tell you right now that the majority of the community would sooner play a bad looking game if it ran perfectly than they would a game that looks beautiful but they can't actually play it. There are several examples of some games that recently came out that have like a 8-bit look to them that are FPSs that people are actually quite enjoying, and that aesthetic's been gone since the 80s. When questions started getting asked about the actual gameplay loop of the game, what we do know is that adventure mode will be returning, but they refuse to answer if any of the bosses from the first one will be returning or not, which means we'll more than likely see them. They have a new mechanic that they're putting into the game called injectables. This is basically dungeons inside of dungeons. These are special rooms or events that can be generated to dungeons additionally to the dungeon content itself. They could even be a large room or even create a whole new branch. The other thing that we learned was that they'll have the difference in difficulties. They'll also have weapons that will drop to difficulty in hardcore items, and let's clarify that just a little bit here. The reason why I say it needs clarification is because they will have their standardized difficulties, which everyone will recognize, but then they keep throwing in the word hardcore items. So these are items that are going to be dropping off bosses, and their definition of hardcore is a boss with 2 methods, and either to defeat them and either to get 2 different results. An example of this would be the Ent in the first one, in which if you defeated him normally you got 1 item, if you blew off one of his legs and defeated him you got a different item. The way the worlds are going to work now is that everything will be randomized inside of it except for the boss. So when you go into biomes, you already know which boss that you're going to fight. That's going to allow you, using adventure mode, to farm those biomes for items that we eventually figure out where to go and what to get. However, everything else inside of that zone will be completely randomized, including the items, the mini bosses, the branches, and the storyline. There's supposedly a great many different storylines in each biome that you could wind up with, making sure that you don't wind up with the same story twice when doing a playthrough until you've defeated all of them. And that will greatly depend on how many storylines they actually put in the game. Things that were given to them as feedback were actually responded to in the video, and saying that support builds will actually be viable, so you can actually play a support build within the game. Melee builds were also concentrated on and will be viable, and there will even be melee items that can be thrown. There will also be shields. We don't know right now if there will be a physical, passive, or activated kind of shield, but there will be many of them according to the devs. One of the many exciting things that we've heard inside of the gameplay devlog was that there will be bows, and lots of them. At least one of them has been confirmed. One of the newer zones that they have introduced us to is the Far Woods, which is a return to Earth and obviously more fighting of the Root. This time they're a bit more armored and a bit more angry. And I don't know which one of the developers is from my generation, but we need to talk about the little roly-polies that are running around on the ground. We had these in the first one, and they were as menacing and troublesome as they will probably be in this game. But now all I can see when I look at them in this version is a campy 90s horror movie called Critters. Thank you, devs, for bringing this nightmare fuel back to life for me. But I also can't say that I disapprove. I apologize that you can't unsee that, but if you like the content so far, make sure you hit that subscription button and the bell notification to know when I put up more videos. Here we're going to get a brief look at Imperial Gardens, which, like many of the other zones, are now going to introduce us to flying enemies. Most of the flying enemies that we've seen so far have been in this zone, although we haven't seen too many zones to be able to make a fair comparison throughout. Here we're obviously dealing with more actual Earth Root. Root is the name that the Earth has given it. Obviously there are other realms and they use different names for it, but in this case we're always going to use the Root because that's one of the most familiar. I think the design of this particular environment is really good, although there's a little too much blending with all the reds and everything. I'm hoping there's some standout inside of the game when we actually see it. It's hard to tell when you're looking at, you know, a collapse video. But in this particular case, we can see most of the flying things in this zone. Flying is going to be a very prevalent thing in this version of Remnant because it's a new mechanic for them. Not that they didn't have flying enemies in the first one, but it wasn't as prevalent. I think it has something to do with engine limitation. At the end of the day, we got a huge presentation, 2 hours long, of a lot of things to swallow for this game. I believe we have a lot more to see and come from Remnant because I know I got many hours out of the first one. I can't imagine because they haven't given us a total hour playthrough on this, but it's supposedly a lot. It's supposed to be at least twice what they provided the first time. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Remember to tell your loved ones that you love them often. We're going to wrap it up here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.